Jack Harmon stood at the bustling spaceport terminal, watching passenger shuttles arrive from Earth. The massive viewing window showed the curve of Proxima b below, its reddish landscape still strange to human eyes even after 15 years of colonization. As head of Colonial Outpost 47's maintenance division, Jack was there to fix a malfunctioning docking array, not to people watch. But his attention was drawn to a woman in a white dress sitting alone on a bench, luggage scattered around her, tears streaming down her face. The spaceport was unusually busy today. The quarterly transport from Earth had arrived, bringing new colonists supplies and mail from home. Jack rarely came to greet the new arrivals anymore. It hurt too much seeing the happy families, the couples reuniting after long separations. It reminded him too much of what he had lost. He focused on the diagnostic panel before him, trying to locate the power fluctuation that had been causing problems with Docking Bay 3. But his eyes kept drifting to the woman in white. She was full-figured, with chestnut hair pulled back in a simple style. Her dress was clearly meant for a special occasion. A bride, Jack realized. One of the mail-order brides coming to meet husbands they knew only through video messages and letters. Jack overheard two members of the colony's greeting committee whispering nearby. Message from Phillips, says she's not what he expected, too heavy. Wants us to send her back on the next transport. That's harsh, the other committee member said. She traveled 3 years to get here. Phillips was clear. Said her pictures. Must have been old or something. He won't come to meet her. Jack felt a surge of anger. Alan Phillips worked in the mining division. Jack had met him a few times during station-wide meetings. The man was no prize himself, balding with a sour attitude that had made him few friends in the colony. The greeting committee approached the woman awkwardly. The older one, Mrs. Dawson, sat beside her while Mr. Ramirez stood uncomfortably shifting, his weight from foot to foot. Ms. Wheeler, there's been a complication, Mrs. Dawson began. Jack couldn't hear the rest of the conversation, but he didn't need to. He watched the woman's face crumble as she received the news. 3 years of travel, only to be rejected sight unseen by a man who had seen only her pre-cryo-sleep photograph. The next Earth transport wouldn't arrive for 6 months, and return. Tickets weren't part of the colonial marriage program. Mrs. Dawson was clearly explaining options, none of them good. The colony had little spare housing. Single women were rare and vulnerable in the male-dominated outpost. Most worked in the medical division or education center and lived in shared dormitories. There was no place for an unexpected, unattached woman. Jack returned to his diagnostic panel, but he couldn't focus. He thought of Maria, his wife. She would have been furious at the situation. That poor woman, she would have said, traveling all that way only to be treated like defective goods. Maria had been dead for 5 years now. The alien pathogen had swept through the eastern quarter of the colony, killing 12 people including Maria and their unborn child. Jack had thrown himself into his work afterward, becoming the most skilled technician on the colony despite being only 34. The colony council respected him, but everyone worried about his isolation. Something about the abandoned bride's dignified silence as she absorbed her humiliation stirred something in Jack. She wasn't crying loudly or making a scene. She just sat there, tears running down her face, nodding occasionally as Mrs. Dawson spoke. Before he could second-guess himself, Jack closed the diagnostic panel and approached the group. Mrs. Dawson looked up in surprise. Mr. Harmon, can we help you with something? Jack ignored her and looked directly at the woman in the wedding dress. I'm Jack Harmon, head of maintenance. The woman wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. Allison Wheeler, she said, her voice steady despite her tears. I couldn't help overhearing, Jack said. Your intended backed out. Allison's cheeks flushed red, but she held his gaze. Yes, apparently I'm not what he expected. Phillips is an idiot, Jack said bluntly, and the colony can't afford to waste talent. Anyone brave enough to travel 3 years deserves better. Mrs. Dawson and Mr. Ramirez exchanged confused glances. Mr. Harmon, we're trying to sort out a difficult situation here, Mrs. Dawson said. Jack took a deep breath. I'll marry her. There was a moment of stunned silence. What? Allison said finally. I'll marry you, Jack repeated. If you want. I have a 2-bedroom unit in the Eastern Quarter. You'd have your own room, your own space. I work long shifts, so you'd hardly see me. If you want to seek an annulment when the next transport arrives in 6 months, I won't contest it. Mrs. Dawson recovered first. Mr. Harmon, this isn't a livestock auction. I know what it's like to be stranded, Jack said quietly, to have your future pulled out from under you. Mr. Ramirez looked skeptical, but desperate. Housing an unmarried woman wasn't in the colony's tight budget. Ms. Wheeler would need to agree, he said. All three looked at Allison, who was staring at Jack with wide, tear-stained eyes. Why would you do this? She asked. You don't know me. Jack struggled to put his feelings into words. Because it's what my wife would have wanted me to do, he said finally. And because no one deserves to be treated the way Phillips treated you. Allison studied him for a long moment. Jack was aware he didn't look his best. His maintenance uniform was stained with lubricant from the docking mechanism. He hadn't shaved that morning. His dark hair needed a trim. This would be a real marriage? Allison asked. Legally? Jack nodded. Yes, but in name only, if that's what you want. What do you get out of this arrangement? Allison's direct question caught Jack off guard. Company, maybe, he said honestly. It's a small colony. People worry about me being alone. This would stop the concerned looks, the attempts to set me up, and you'd get a place to stay, time to figure out your next steps. Allison looked down at her wedding dress, smoothing the fabric with her hands. I never imagined my wedding day like this, she said softly. I'm sorry, Jack said. You deserve better. Allison looked up, and for the first time, a small smile appeared on her face. Maybe I do. But right now, you're the best option I have. She stood up and extended her hand. All right, Jack Harmon, I accept your proposal. Mrs. Dawson's mouth fell open. But you just met. I just met Alan Phillips, too, Allison pointed out. At least Jack showed up. Jack felt the corners of his mouth turn up in what might have been his first smile in months. The chapel's on level 3, he said. We can head there now if you're ready. Allison nodded and gathered her small carry-on bag. The rest of her luggage sat in a pile beside the bench. I am ready, she said, and there was a new determination in her voice that made Jack think that maybe, just maybe, this impulsive decision wasn't the worst one he'd ever made. The spaceport's small chapel had never hosted such an unusual wedding. Allison wore her original wedding dress, a simple white gown that hugged her generous curves. Jack wore his maintenance uniform, having come straight from his shift. The lubricant stain on his sleeve stood out against the gray fabric, but there had been no time to change. Colony Administrator Kevin Parker performed the ceremony, clearly uncomfortable with the hasty arrangement but bound by colonial law to honor it. The witnesses were a hodgepodge of curious onlookers and Jack's few friends from the maintenance crew who had received his urgent message and hurried over. Marriage is not to be entered into lightly, Administrator Parker said, looking pointedly at Jack and Allison. But the colony recognizes the rights of consenting adults to form family units. Jack could feel the judgment in the administrator's voice. Parker had known Maria, had attended their funeral service 5 years ago. Now here, Jack was marrying a stranger in the same chapel where he had said goodbye to his first wife. Beside Jack, Allison stood with her head high. Her tears had dried, replaced by a determined expression that Jack admired. She had been dealt a terrible hand today, but she was playing it with dignity. I, Jack Harmon, take you, Allison Wheeler, as my lawfully wedded wife, he said when prompted, his voice steady. Only his friend Ben Davis noticed the slight tremor in Jack's hands. When Allison spoke her vows, her voice was barely audible, but she met Jack's eyes with determination. Neither had any illusions about the arrangement. This was a marriage of convenience, a solution to an immediate problem. The administrator pronounced them husband and wife. There was no kiss, just an awkward handshake before Jack led his new bride to the colony's transport shuttle. I didn't think this part through, Jack admitted as they waited for the shuttle that would take them to the Eastern Quarter where his living unit was located. I have nothing prepared. No food, no welcome. It's okay, Allison said. This isn't exactly a traditional honeymoon. Jack looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. She was younger than him, probably in her late 20s. Her brown hair was coming loose from its pins after the long day. Her face was round, with a small nose and full lips. Not beautiful in the traditional sense, but there was something appealing about her direct gaze and the way she carried herself. I'm sorry about Phillips, Jack said. He's not well liked in the colony, has a reputation for being difficult. Allison sighed. I should have been more careful. We only had video calls, and I always made sure to look my best. I lost some weight before. The photos I sent him were taken, but gained it back during prep for cryosleep. The doctor said it was normal, that most travelers gain weight before long sleep. Phillips is still wrong, Jack said firmly. A decent man would have honored his commitment. The shuttle arrived, and they boarded in silence. Other colonists stared at them. News traveled fast in the small community. Jack ignored the looks, but he noticed Allison shrinking into herself, trying to become invisible in her conspicuous white dress. Jack's unit was in one of the prefabricated buildings that made up most of the colony's living quarters. From the outside, it looked identical to every other unit. Inside, it was Spartan but spacious by colony standards, a 2-bedroom unit with a small common area and kitchenette. As a senior technician, he had privileges that most colonists didn't. You'll have your privacy, Jack assured Allison as he showed her to the second bedroom. It had been a spare room used mainly for storage. He had cleared it out years ago but never found the energy to make it into anything else. The bed was made with standard-issue gray linens. I work long shifts. You probably won't see much of me. Allison set her carry-on bag on the bed and looked around the small room. Thank you, this is more than I expected to have today. Jack stood awkwardly in the doorway. There's food in the kitchen. Not much, but enough for tonight. We can go to the commissary tomorrow to get you whatever you need. Allison nodded, then asked, What happens next? With the colony, I mean. I was supposed to work with Alan in the agricultural section. I have a degree in bioengineering, specializing in crop adaptation. Jack raised his eyebrows. That's valuable. Here. The hydroponics bay has been struggling with crop failures. The soil on this planet isn't compatible with Earth plants without major modifications. I know, Allison said. That's why I applied for the colonist program. My research was in adapting Earth crops to hostile environments. Jack felt a small spark of something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The Colony Council meets tomorrow. They'll want to talk to you, figure out where to place you. Your skills will be welcome, regardless of your unusual arrival. Allison gave a small laugh. That's one way to put it. An awkward silence fell between them. They were strangers, yet legally married, sharing a living space but nothing else. Jack hadn't lived with another person since Maria died. I should get cleaned up, Jack said finally. Feel free to use anything in the kitchen. Make yourself at home. The words felt strange on his tongue. This had been just his space for so long. Allison nodded, and Jack retreated to his own room, closing the door behind him. He sat on the edge of his bed, head in his hands. What had he done? Married, a complete stranger on impulse. Maria would have understood, he thought. She had always been the compassionate one, the one who took in strays and helped those in need. In the quiet of his room, Jack could hear Allison moving around in the kitchen. The soft sounds of another person in his space should have felt intrusive, but instead they were oddly comforting. The next morning, Jack woke early as usual. He had a shift starting at 600. He moved quietly through the unit, not wanting to wake Allison, but when he entered the common area, he found her already up, dressed in simple colony-issue clothing rather than her wedding dress. Good morning, she said. I made coffee. She gestured to the small pot on the counter. Jack blinked in surprise. Thanks. He poured himself a cup and took a sip. It was good, better than the bitter brew he usually made for himself. I hope you don't mind, Allison said. I couldn't sleep much. It's fine, Jack said. I'm heading to my shift now. The Colony Council meets at 1400 hours. I'll come back to take you there. Allison nodded. I'll be ready. As Jack headed to the maintenance bay, he felt strangely lighter than he had in years. Having another person in his space, someone waiting, for him to return. It was both terrifying and oddly comforting. He had no illusions about this arrangement. It was temporary, practical. Yet he couldn't deny that for the first time in 5 years, his empty unit felt like it might someday become a home again. The Colony Council chamber was a plain room with a large oval table. 12 people sat around it, each representing different sections of the colony. Administrator Parker sat at the head, his expression serious as Jack and Allison entered. Mr. and Mrs. Harmon, Parker said, the words sounding strange to Jack's ears. Please take a seat. Jack pulled out a chair for Allison before sitting beside her. He felt protective of her even though they barely knew each other. The stares of the council members were not all friendly. This is an unusual situation, Parker began. Ms. Wheeler, excuse me, Mrs. Harmon, you came here under the colonial marriage program to wed Alan Phillips. That arrangement has been canceled. However, you are now married to Mr. Harmon. Yes, Allison said simply. The question before this council is what to do with you, Parker continued. You were assigned to the agricultural division based on your skills in Phillips's position, but now, I still have those skills, Allison said firmly. I have a doctorate in bioengineering with a focus on crop adaptation in hostile environments. I can be useful to the colony. Dr. Nancy Rivera, head of the science division, leaned forward. We're having significant issues with the hydroponics bay. Earth crops aren't adapting well to the local conditions, even in controlled environments. I've studied the soil and atmospheric conditions of Proxima b, Allison said. My research team on Earth was developing strains of wheat and corn that could thrive here. Dr. Rivera looked interested. We could use that expertise. Our current crop yield is only 40% of projections. Parker frowned. The agricultural division is under Daniel Wade's supervision, and Wade is friends with Phillips. Move her to the science division then, Dr. Rivera suggested. She can work directly with me. Jack watched as the council members discussed Allison's placement. She sat straight, answering their questions clearly and confidently. This was a different woman from the tearful bride he'd met yesterday. Finally, Parker nodded. Very well. Mrs. Harmon will be assigned to the science division under Dr. Rivera's supervision. Standard probationary period applies. Thank you, Allison said. I won't let you down. As they left the council chamber, Jack could see the relief on Allison's face. That went well, he said. Better than I expected, Allison admitted. I thought they might send me back to Earth anyway. They need skilled people too badly, Jack said. And Rivera is good. She'll value your work. They walked together through the colony corridors. It was strange, Jack thought, how quickly he was getting used to having Allison beside him. When do you start work? He asked. Tomorrow morning, Allison said. Dr. Rivera wants me to review the current crop data right away. Jack nodded. I'm on second shift tomorrow. I'll show you how to get to the science sector before I go to work. That evening, they ate a simple meal together in Jack's quarters. The silence was less awkward than the night before. Tell me about yourself, Allison said suddenly. I know almost nothing about the man I married. Jack hesitated. He wasn't used to talking about himself. Not much to tell. I've been on the colony for 8 years. Came out with the second wave of settlers. With your wife? Allison asked gently. Jack nodded. Maria was a doctor. She worked in the medical center. He took a deep breath. She died 5 years ago. There was a pathogen, something native to this planet. 12 people died before they found a treatment. I'm sorry, Allison said. That's terrible. She was pregnant, Jack added, the words coming out before he could stop them. 4 months. We were going to name him David. Allison reached across the table and touched Jack's hand briefly. I can't imagine how hard that must have been. Jack looked down at the table. "Why did you sign up for the colonial marriage program?" he asked, changing the subject. Allison sat back. "Earth is overcrowded, polluted. Research funding was cut again and again, and then—" She sighed. "I was engaged back on Earth. Peter. We were together for 3 years. "What happened?" Jack asked. "He decided he didn't want to be with a woman who weighed more than he did," Allison said bluntly. "Said I'd let myself go, that I wasn't trying hard enough." Jack frowned. "He sounds like an idiot." That made Allison smile. "Yes, he was, but it hurt. And when the colonial marriage program advertised for women with science backgrounds, it seemed like a fresh start. Phillips and I had video, calls. He seemed nice enough, said he didn't care about my size, that he wanted a smart wife who could help build the colony. And then he backed out when he saw you in person," Jack said. "History repeating itself," Allison said with a small shrug. "At least this time I got a husband who doesn't seem to mind how I look." Jack felt his face grow warm. "I don't mind at all," he said honestly. "You're—" He struggled to find the right words. "You're real, solid. Not like those colony women who spend all their time in the recreation center trying to stay skinny on half rations." Allison laughed, a genuine sound that made Jack smile. "Well, that's the nicest backhanded compliment I've ever received." Jack's face grew even warmer. "Sorry, I'm not good with words." "It's okay," Allison said. "I know what you meant, and thank you." The next morning, Jack showed Allison to the science sector. Dr. Rivera was waiting for them, her expression eager. "Mrs. Harmon, welcome," she said. "I've pulled all our crop data for you to review." "Please call me Allison," Allison said. Dr. Rivera smiled. "Only if you call me Nancy. We're informal here in the science sector." Jack watched as the two women began discussing crop yields and soil chemistry. He felt a strange pride seeing how quickly Allison was fitting in. "I should get to my shift," he said after a few minutes. Allison turned to him. "What time will you be home?" The question caught Jack by surprise. Home. Such a simple word, but it had been a long time since his quarters. Had felt like a home. "Around 1800 hours," he said. "I'll try to be there by then," Allison said. "Maybe we can have dinner together again?" Jack nodded. "I'd like that." As he walked to the maintenance bay, Jack realized he was looking forward to going back to his quarters at the end of his shift. For the first time in years, someone would be waiting for him. It was an arrangement of convenience, he reminded himself. Temporary, but it felt good all the same. That night, Allison told him about her first day as they ate. Her eyes lit up as she described the hydroponics bay and her ideas for improving the crop yields. "The problem isn't just the soil," she explained. "It's the light spectrum. Proxima B's sun gives off different wavelengths than Earth's sun. The plants aren't getting what they need for proper photosynthesis." Jack listened, fascinated, not just by the science but by Allison's passion for it. She spoke with her hands, gesturing to emphasize points. Her face was animated, beautiful in its enthusiasm. When had he last felt that passionate about anything, Jack wondered. Not since Maria died, certainly. He had gone through the motions, done his job well, but the spark had been gone. Watching Allison, Jack felt something stir within him, a curiosity about the future that he hadn't experienced in years. 1 month passed quickly. Allison threw herself into her work at the science division, often staying late in the labs. Jack found himself checking the time more often during his shifts, looking forward to going back to their shared quarters. They had fallen into a comfortable routine, eating dinner together when their schedules allowed, sharing the small tasks of daily life. "Look at this," Allison said one evening, showing Jack her tablet. On the screen was a graph with a sharp, upward curve. "This is the crop yield from Bay 4, where I implemented my light spectrum adjustments." Jack studied the graph. "That's a big increase. 60% higher than the control group," Allison said proudly. "Dr. Rivera wants to apply the same changes to all the growing bays." "That's amazing," Jack said, genuinely impressed. You've done more in a month than their team did in a year. Allison blushed at the praise. The colony needs food security. I'm just glad I can help. Jack watched her as she continued explaining the technical aspects of her work. In just a month, Allison had transformed from the tearful, rejected bride to a confident scientist making real contributions to the colony. Her cheeks were flushed with excitement, her eyes bright. Jack felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the hot tea he was drinking. You're staring, Allison said, breaking off her explanation. Sorry, Jack said, embarrassed to be caught. I was just thinking how different you look from the day we met. Is that good or bad? Allison asked with a small smile. Good, Jack said firmly. Very good. The moment was interrupted by a loud knock at their door. Jack frowned. They rarely had visitors. He opened the door to find Alan Phillips standing there, his narrow face twisted in an unpleasant expression. I want to talk to her, Phillips demanded, trying to look past Jack into the living quarters. Jack blocked the doorway. Who? Don't play dumb, Harmon, Phillips snapped. The woman who was supposed to be my wife, Wheeler. Her name is Allison Harmon now, Jack said coldly. And she doesn't want to talk to you. Jack? Allison called from behind him. Who is it? Jack hesitated, but Allison came to the door before he could answer. Her face hardened when she saw Phillips. What do you want? She asked. Phillips had the grace to look uncomfortable. The council just told me about the crop yield increases in your test bay. They're saying you've solved the growth problems. And? Allison's voice was cool. And I'm the agricultural liaison, Phillips said. I should have been consulted before they implemented your changes. You gave up any right to be consulted when you rejected me at the spaceport, Allison said. Phillips' face reddened. Look, I made a mistake, okay? You weren't what I expected, but now that I'm useful, you're interested? Allison finished for him. No, thank you. Jack felt a surge of pride at Allison's confidence. She wasn't the tearful woman he'd met at the spaceport anymore. We had an arrangement, Phillips insisted. You came all this way to marry me. And you rejected me, Allison said. Publicly, humiliated me, made me feel worthless. She took a deep breath. But it turned out to be the best thing that could have happened to me. Jack glanced at her in surprise. Jack married me when you wouldn't, Allison continued. He gave me a home, expected nothing in return. And now I'm doing work I love, with people who respect me. She reached out and took Jack's hand. I'm exactly where I should be. Phillips looked from Allison to Jack, his expression darkening. You think this maintenance tech is a better match than me? I'm on the council. I have influence. And I have happiness, Allison said simply. Good night, Mr. Phillips. Jack closed the door in Phillips's face, feeling strangely breathless. Allison was still holding his hand. Did you mean that? He asked quietly. About being where you should be? Allison looked down at their joined hands. Yes, she said. I know this marriage started as a convenience, but... She met his eyes. I'm happy here, Jack. With you. Jack felt something shift inside him, a wall crumbling that he had built around his heart after Maria died. I'm happy too, he admitted. Happier than I've been in a long time. Allison smiled and squeezed his hand before letting go. Good. Now, should we finish our dinner? The next day, Jack was summoned to Administrator Parker's office. He entered cautiously, wondering if Phillips had filed some kind of complaint. Parker didn't waste time on pleasantries. Phillips is making trouble, he said. Claiming your marriage to Allison Wheeler violated the Colonial Marriage Program rules. Her name is Allison Harmon, Jack corrected, and we followed all proper procedures. You performed the ceremony yourself. Parker sighed. I know, but Phillips has friends on the Earth Oversight Committee. He's pushing for your marriage to be reviewed. Jack felt a cold fear settle in his stomach. What does that mean? It means they could rule your marriage invalid, Parker said. If that happens, Allison's residence permit could be revoked. She might have to return to Earth on the next transport. That's in 3 months, Jack said, calculating quickly. They had been married for just over a month. The 6-month point, when Allison could have chosen to leave, seemed far away now. Yes, Parker confirmed. I'm doing what I can to block Phillips's petition, but you should be prepared. Jack nodded, his mind racing. Thank you for the warning. When he returned to their quarters that evening, Jack found Allison already there, cooking something that smelled delicious. You're early, she said with a smile that faded when she saw his expression. What's wrong? Jack told her about the meeting with Parker. Allison listened, her face growing pale. So Phillips could force me to go back to Earth? She asked when he finished. Parker is fighting it, Jack assured her, and we could appeal any ruling. Allison turned back to the stove, stirring the pot with sharp, angry movements. He couldn't stand that I was happy without him, that I'm successful here. Jack moved to stand beside her. We won't let him win, he promised. The colony needs your work. The crop yields. Is that why you want me to stay? Allison interrupted. Because of my work? Jack shook his head. No. I want you to stay because... He struggled to find the words. Because my quarters felt like a home again when you moved in. Because I like seeing you at the end of my shift. Because you make me laugh and think and feel things I thought died with Maria. Allison's eyes filled with tears. Do you mean that? Jack took a deep breath. I think I'm falling in love with you, Allison, he admitted. And it terrifies me. Allison turned off the stove and faced him fully. It terrifies me too, she said softly. But I think I'm falling in love with you too. Jack reached out hesitantly and touched her cheek. Allison leaned into his touch, her eyes never leaving his. Slowly, giving her time to pull away, Jack bent down and kissed her gently on the lips. It was their first real kiss, sweet and tentative. When they broke apart, both were smiling despite the uncertainty that hung over them. We'll fight this, Jack promised. Together. 2 months passed. Jack and Allison lived with the uncertainty of Phillips's petition hanging over them, but they refused to let it dim their growing happiness. Their marriage, which had begun as an arrangement of convenience, had blossomed into something real and precious to them both. Allison's work in the science division continued to impress the colony leadership. She had expanded her light spectrum adjustments to all the growing bays, and food production was higher than it had been since the colony's founding. Dr. Rivera had promoted her to deputy science lead. Jack found himself smiling more, laughing more. The empty shell he had become after Maria's death was filling with life again. He and Allison had given up the pretense of separate bedrooms weeks ago. It was a normal day when the alarms began to sound throughout the colony. Jack was in the maintenance bay working on a power conduit. He dropped his tools at the first blare of the warning siren. What's happening? He asked the nearest technician. Unknown ship entered orbit, the man said, checking his comm unit. Not one of ours. Jack felt a chill. The colony had been established after the peace treaty with the Arcosian Empire, but relations remained tense. No Arcosian ships had approached the colony in the 5 years since the treaty was signed. The colony-wide comm system crackled. All section leaders report to the command center immediately, Administrator Parker's voice announced. This is not a drill. Jack was not a section leader, but as head of maintenance he was responsible for ensuring the colony's life support and defense systems remained operational during emergencies. He headed for the command center at a run. The large room was already filled with colony leaders when Jack arrived. Dr. Rivera was there, but Allison was not. Jack felt a moment of relief that she was safely in the labs. The ship in orbit is Arcosian, Parker announced without preamble. They're demanding we surrender the colony immediately. Murmurs of fear spread through the room. The Arcosian Empire had fought a bitter war with Earth over the colonization of the Proxima system. Many remembered the early colonies that had been destroyed before the treaty. Why now? Dr. Rivera asked. The treaty has held for 5 years. They claim we've violated it, Parker said grimly. They say our agricultural experiments are weapons development. Jack felt cold. Allison's work. The Arcosians must have detected the changes in the colony's power usage patterns when they implemented her light spectrum adjustments. "That's ridiculous," Dr. Rivera protested. "We're growing food, not weapons." "The Arcosians don't believe us," Parker said. "They've given us 6 hours to surrender or they'll attack." The room erupted in panicked voices. Jack stood frozen, thinking of Allison, of the life they were building together. He couldn't lose her like he had lost Maria. Not again. "We need to evacuate," someone suggested. "There's not enough time or transport capacity," Parker replied. "Our emergency shuttles can only hold 20% of the population." "We could show them the hydroponics bays," Dr. Rivera suggested. "Prove we're just growing food." Parker nodded. "I've offered that. They refused. They say it's a trick." Jack had been studying the displays showing the Arcosian vessel. Something about its position nagged at him. It was hanging in high orbit, keeping the colony between itself and Proxima B's sun. "What if we could blind them?" he said suddenly. The room fell silent. "Explain," Parker demanded. "Allison's light spectrum adjustments," Jack said. "We increased the reflective capacity of the colony's exterior to capture more of the specific wavelengths needed for plant growth. If we reversed the polarity of the reflector panels and aimed them at the Arcosian ship..." Dr. Rivera's eyes widened. "We could create a focused light beam intense enough to temporarily disable their sensors. Could that work?" Parker asked, doubtfully. "In theory," Jack said. "But we'd need to reconfigure the entire power grid to channel enough energy to the reflector array." "That would take days," one of the engineers protested. "No," came a voice from the doorway. "It would take hours." Jack turned to see Allison standing there, her face determined. "I've been running simulations on the light array for weeks," she continued, walking into the room. "Looking for ways to make it more efficient. I already have the calculations for a complete reconfiguration." Parker looked from Allison to Jack. "Can you do this?" Jack met Allison's eyes. "Together we can," he said. They worked frantically, Jack leading a team to physically reconfigure the power relays while Allison directed the reprogramming of the control systems. Time ticked away, 4 hours left. Then 3. "We're ready," Jack reported finally, his voice hoarse from shouting orders. The command center was tense as Parker gave the order to activate the modified reflector array. The massive panels on the colony's exterior shifted, focusing the intense light of Proxima's red sun directly at the Arcosian vessel. "Their communications have stopped," the comm officer reported. "I think their sensors are down." "Launch the shuttles," Parker ordered. "Get our diplomatic team up there while they're blind. Maybe we can talk our way out of this." Jack sagged against the wall, exhausted. Allison found him there and wrapped her arms around him. "You did it," she whispered. "We did it," he corrected her. They waited anxiously as the diplomatic shuttle docked with the Arcosian vessel. Minutes stretched into an hour, then 2. "Shuttle is returning," the comm officer announced finally. "They're requesting permission to bring an Arcosian delegation to the colony." Parker looked surprised but nodded. "Granted." Later, in the council chamber, the Arcosian delegation, tall, scaled beings with 4 arms and iridescent eyes, examined the hydroponics bays with interest. "Your light technology is impressive," their leader said through a translator. "We mistook its purpose." "It's for growing food," Allison explained, showing them the healthy crops. "Not weapons." The Arcosian studied her. "You created this?" "She did," Jack said proudly, standing beside her. "The treaty remains intact," the Arcosian announced. "But we would propose an amendment, sharing of agricultural techniques. Our world struggles with food production as well." As the diplomats worked out the details, Jack pulled Allison aside. "You know what this means?" he asked quietly. "You've not only saved the colony, you've created the first real cooperation between humans and Arcosians." Allison shook her head. "I just wanted to grow better crops." Jack laughed and kissed her forehead. "And change the world in the process." 3 days later, they received word from Administrator Parker. The Earth Oversight Committee had reviewed Philip's petition regarding their marriage. They've rejected it, Parker told them, looking pleased. Your marriage stands, and with the new Arcosian Agricultural Exchange program, they're interested in extending your contract for 5 more years, Allison. Jack felt a weight lift from his shoulders. 5 more years, together. That night, as they lay in bed, Allison traced patterns on Jack's chest with her finger. 5 years, she said softly. I never imagined when I stepped off that transport that I'd find this kind of happiness. I never thought I'd find love again, Jack admitted. After Maria, I thought that part of my life was over. Allison propped herself up on her elbow to look at him. Do you ever regret it? Marrying a stranger that day? Jack smiled and pulled her closer. Best impulsive decision I ever made. Outside their window, the red light of Proxima B's sun bathed the colony in a warm glow. In the hydroponics bays, crops grew strong and healthy under Allison's modified light spectrum. And in a small living unit in the eastern quarter, 2 people who had once been strangers held each other close, no longer alone.